Well, some people want to call it a done deal. Well, on November 3rd, you, the voters, will be able to go to the polls to see if Cleve Dunn Jr. is worthy to take the title in Metro Council District 6. Join us now here on The Hideout as I had a sit down with him to ask him the tough questions that you wanted to know and the answers, which you'll be the judge on whether or not if it's good enough to have him fill that empty seat for Metro Council District 6. Mr. Cleve Dunn Jr., how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good, Braylon.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us this evening. I know that you have definitely been hitting it hard, especially less than 30 days from Election Day. And so just to be able to take time out of your busy campaign schedule to come and just share a few words with us, I'm really appreciative. So you're running for the Metro Council in District 6, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, so I know a lot of people probably been seeing campaign videos, they see your events, and a lot of people know about Cleve Dunn, the candidate. Who can you tell us about Cleve Dunn, the man? Where did it all begin, your humble beginnings?
Well, let me first thank you, Braylon, for the Hideout and Next Def TV for having me. Thank you guys for creating this platform to give me and other candidates an opportunity to share who we are, our visions, and our platform. It's interesting that you say where did it all begin. It actually all began right here in this area, this neighborhood.
Wow.
My mom and dad are both from the Eden Park area. They married and moved further north in Baton Rouge to Scotlandville.
Wow.
Raised me and my sisters a couple miles away from here in a neighborhood called Bank. So that's where I was born, that's where I was reared, that's where I was raised. That's where a lot of the family values that I have, community values that I have were created between Banks and the Eden Park area. I'm what I call a Baton Rouge boy. I'm grown into a Baton Rouge man. I went to Capitol High School. That's where I met my wife, Stacy, my high school sweetheart. We've been married 22 years now.
Congratulations.
Together 25 years. We have two daughters, Malaysia and Anaya. Malaysia is a freshman at LSU. Anaya is a senior at Liberty High School, which is the former Lee High School, which, as you know, I was actively involved in changing the name there.
Right, right.
So I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a business owner by trade. I own Dunn Enterprises, a very diverse project portfolio, including logistics, real estate, and hair care industry. My wife is a cosmetologist. We own a hair salon, Chardonnay Hair Studio, my courier service, logistics company, Runner's Courier Service, transports paperwork, products, material for commercial entities, government entities, as well as quasi-government entities. And we invest in real estate throughout the area and throughout the country. So that's me as a person, that's my background. Why I'm running for Metro Council, we have a $900 million budget in City Parish, and less than 5% of those dollars are being spent with minority-owned vendors like myself.
Wow.
Less than 2% of those dollars are being spent with black-owned vendors like myself. And I think it's important that we have small business owners, local business owners, minority business owners on the Metro Council to advocate for those resources. The city is about 50% African American. The parish is about 47, 48% African American, and we shouldn't have such disparity. We already have a huge income gap in the city, in the parish, from whites and blacks. We make about 1/3 of what our white counterparts make. So a part of that, city parish plays a role in that. We need a comprehensive plan to address our flooding and drainage issues. In 2016, my mom's house flooded, my mother-in-law's house flooded, my sister's house flooded. 50% of the homes in the neighborhood that I lived in at the time flooded. So we was in threat of flooding as well. Every time it rains, we're all concerned that we're gonna repeat 2016 again. Right. We need to make sure there's a project, there's a similar to Move EBR, which addressed it, infrastructure, and we need something similar to that to address our flooding and drainage issues. So that's a couple of reasons why I'm running.
Yes, and it's amazing that you say that. You know, we run on practically $1 billion budget, and like you said, less than 5% of that goes to minority-owned businesses, and arguably a majority housed or occupied city.
That's correct.
Why do you think those disparities exist? Do you think it is a systematic issue, or do you think it's just, I don't know, sometimes it's how the chips fall?
No, exactly, it's a systematic issue. And I've said this over and over again. Baton Rouge can be a case study for excluding minorities, specifically black people.
Wow.
It could be a case study for the barriers that exist, the access. It's a case study for the Good Old Boy Network. It's a case study for the things that exclude people who look like us. And we need to change that. So you got to go in and gut it. not just electing a mayor, not even just electing a council person. You have to go in and change some of those department heads. Department heads are giving contracts, jobs, and opportunities to people who look like them. So it's important that we are inclusive and we're diverse in everything we do. It's important that gender, race, sexual orientation is represented in city parish. That way there are nobody being left out. Everybody has a seat at the table. Everybody has equal access and opportunity to some of these jobs, contracts, and things of that nature.
You know, earlier you mentioned 2016, which was arguably the hottest summer in Baton Rouge and had nothing to do with global warming.
Yes.
It seems as though that the city and the parish was on the verge of a racial powder keg waiting to explode. You, along with many other African-American men, especially during the protests after the shooting of Alton Sterling, were there on the front lines. Many of us have seen those photos where some of you all literally stood between the young people and the police officers that had guns out and drawn. What gave you that boldness to be able to even go out there and do that, knowing the nature between policing and minorities at the time, to still say, you know what, I'm going to stand up and still do what I have to do?
Well, first, the initial reaction or call to action was because of the killing of Alton Sterling. And I, along with other people like yourself and other folks that were out there with us, Eugene Collins, A.V. Mitchell, Gary Chambers, Walter Gino McLaughlin, Johnny Young, identified with that. We felt that that could be us. And we felt the killing was unjustifiable. That didn't have to happen. The police should have de-escalated, but they arrived and escalated the situation. They created it worse. So that was the initial call to action. So we were disappointed, we were hurt, we were frustrated, we were upset, and we wanted our voices to be heard and we wanted our community's voices to be heard. But aside from that, we had just seen Ferguson and some other incidents where it was a similar incident that happened in those cities, and we watched our people in other cities and states burn down our own communities. So we wanted to protest, we wanted to hold law enforcement and the administration accountable, but we wanted to make sure we protest and not burn down or harm our own community. In our mindset, that was counterproductive. So we wanted to be there to let our voices be heard, to advocate for justice for the Sterling family, but we wanted to be a conduit and help our people understand we can be frustrated, we can protest, but let's not burn down our community. These businesses, these jobs, we depend on them. You know, they provide products and services to us. It makes no sense to burn our community down.
Now, notice that you said that, we're trying to get justice for the Sterling family. Recently, as we know, the Metro Council actually had the opportunity to at least maybe not be able to bring justice, but at least try to bring something. I used to serve in the church to where the pastor used to say, money will never mend a broken heart, but it sure will lift up a bowed down head. But apparently our current Metro Council did not see fit to award the children of Alton Sterling $5 million. What was your personal reaction to that? And if that measure comes back up again on the council, do you think it's possible to get those crucial 7 votes needed? And if so, how, when that 5-7 split seems to be so prevalent here in this parish?
Well, I wasn't surprised, Braylon. As you know, our current Metro Council, we have 7 white Republicans and 5 black Democrats. And many of the issues, many of the items that come before the council are decided on racial and party lines. All of the Republicans on the Metro Council currently feel that Officer Salamone and the BRPD did nothing wrong when they took the life of Alton Sterling. So I know the mindset. I've seen it not only on this issue, but many other issues. Anytime there's a minority or black issue, then those same 7 individuals don't support it, don't show up, abstain, or vote against it. So that's consistent with who they are and how they feel. They don't feel anything was done wrong, so they don't feel like they need to award the family. There was definitely a wrong done. The city and its elected officials need to be held accountable, and they need to pay the family. No amount of money, as you mentioned, will bring Brother Sterling back or will make the family feel whole, but the city should be held accountable because of that liability, and they should pay. I don't think it will happen with this council. I think it's going to take when our council or the next council is elected in, to be able to do that. If I'm on the council at the time, I would definitely advocate that we settle it, and I would also vote in support of it. And let me tell you, I don't think $5 million is enough.
Wow. Okay. So are you trying to match the Breonna Taylor numbers, or are you trying to trying to maximize that?
Again, no number will be enough. But we've seen in other cities where 10, 15, $20 million. So $5 million is not enough. And currently it's going to court. And I think that the city is going to end up spending even more money, in legal fees, battling it and stringing it out instead of selling it.
Wow. Well, definitely talking about battles, you've definitely had your fair share, especially when you declared your candidacy. Why do you think you received so much adversity and pushback to where it seems as though there was one effort in solidarity in front of City Hall to try to either get you out of the race or remove off the ballot? Well, why do you think you're getting such vicious for pushback from all of your candidates?
Yeah. Well, politics is a contact sport, Braylon. When you get in this, you got to know what you're getting into. People do that. That's a part of the process. I think that they're uncertain with their possibilities and chances of competing at the ballot box. So they would try to get me out on a technicality so they don't have to compete with me. They understand. They've seen me run campaigns as a political consultant and campaign manager. They understand the network that I have, the influence I have in this community, the support I have from the people of this community, and they don't want to deal with it. They know they can't compete, so they don't want to compete. They want to get me out on a technicality. But, that didn't happen. We're still in this race, and we're running to win.
Yeah, so one of the major hurdles, of course, that a lot of people are looking forward to with this next council is, I guess, trying to support further police reforms. Now, as we've seen in the national movement, many communities are trying to defund the police. What do you think will probably be the appropriate measure? Well, first I'll ask you, do you agree with defunding the police force here? Or if not, if so or if not, what do you think is the best way to start further police reform so that the community and the police department can become one?
I agree with the concept. It's the terminology that I have an issue with.
Okay.
We need law enforcement officials. They protect us. Many of them serve us. And all police are not bad. We have some bad apples. We need to get rid of them. So in my mind, when I think about what you're speaking of, not necessarily defunding and getting rid of the police, but it's not having police respond to mental health calls, social service calls. So we can take that portion of the budget and assign that to social workers and people who are in the healthcare field and profession who are trained to deal with that. And, law enforcement officials have a lot of training. I do understand they get some components of that. But oftentimes when you show up to the scene with a gun, many people feel like, okay, I need to use the gun.
Right.
So some of these calls I think can be responded with social service and not necessarily with law enforcement. So in my mind, when I think about that concept, I'm thinking about making sure that we do that, and we also are more proactive, doing things that will prevent young people and adults from getting involved with the criminal justice system, investing into some of our nonprofits, and investing in job training, career readiness, and things of that nature. What we need to do right now is stop the streets from out recruiting government, the streets from out recruiting schools, the streets from out recruiting businesses. Right now, the streets is winning, and we got to change that around. When people walk out of many of our communities outside of their home, illegal activity is waiting on them.
Wow.
We got to make sure that legal activity is there waiting on them. Make sure there are jobs and income opportunities that they can respect, that they can take care of their families, and feel like productive citizens of society. So that's what we need to do.
Now, you talk about definitely legal activity. Recently, we know that as of October 3rd, Baton Rouge has 83 homicides, and they said that it's currently on pace that before the end of the year, it'll break the 2017 record of 106 homicides. If elected to the council, what are some measures or some policies that you're going to advocate for to try to quell this pattern of violence in our community?
Well, it's basically what I just talked about. What you're seeing playing out is conflicts in many of our neighborhoods, beefs and things of that nature. And to be frank with you, people in the streets have a different way of handling conflict, resolving conflict, and many times it's violence.
Right.
So there needs to be conflict resolution, but many people grow up in an environment where they see violence is the way to solve an issue. So what you have to do is try to, those that are already engaged in that type of activity, try to get them rehabilitated, change the mindset. But more importantly, we need to change people from going down that direction, stop people from going down that direction. And again, that's the proactive approach. The police, the sheriff, every branch of police department respond to crime. They don't stop crime. Once a crime happens, you call them and they come out and respond. We need to be proactive and catch it before the crime happens. And you do that by giving people jobs and income opportunities. I don't think people are born and wake up and say, hey, I want to be a criminal. I want to go break the law. I want to, be adversarial with the police. What happens is they either don't have the awareness or access to income that will create the type of quality of life that they want. But again, when they walk out of the house in the community, there's illegal activity that's showing them, hey, you can have this type of life.
Right.
And when they get in that type of life, it's a different set of rules. So what we have to do is, again, be proactive, make sure we're hiring local, make sure we're getting our young people and our adults jobs and income opportunities that will stop them from getting into that environment, that culture of violence, and getting them in the workforce, creating jobs and businesses, and that way they won't result to violence.
Now, speaking of young people, earlier you told us that you have a senior in high school and you have a freshman in college. Now, what is your message to young working professionals such as myself who are truly only here in Baton Rouge for the love?
Yeah.
But what do you tell your daughters who say, Daddy, let me tell you something. I know I was born here, I was raised here, I love you and Mama, but after I get my degree, I have to leave because I know Baton Rouge has nothing for me left here.
Yeah.
What do you tell that to your daughters, and what do you say to the other young professionals to keep us inspired to say, no, don't give up on Baton Rouge?
I tell them the same philosophy me and my wife adopted. We understand Houston, Austin, Atlanta, and some of these areas have some bells and whistles that we don't have. But Braylon, I've always taken the mindset, I love to travel. I have no desire to live anywhere else but Baton Rouge. I love to travel, but what I do is I go to those cities, I go to those states, I go to these countries and see what we don't have here. So if you can go duplicate that and bring it here, you can create a job, you can create an income, you can create a business for yourself. Oftentimes people run to Atlanta, people run to Houston, people run to these other markets, and you realize, guess what? There are other people from small and mid-sized towns that run into that area as well. Right. So you're not the only one that's thinking like that. So not only are natives there, but you got people coming from all over. So the competition level is increased as well. Right. But why not be an innovator? Why not be a creator? Why not be a trailblazer to bring something to Baton Rouge, whether it's a business, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's an entertainment complex, an idea, bring it to Baton Rouge. You know, this market is growing. It's much more of an entertainment, job creation, hotel than it was when I was growing up. So I think Baton Rouge is on the cuff. I think it's ready. I think our young people, I would say, stay here. Find that niche, find that idea, find that business, and I think Baton Rouge is ripe to support it.
Okay. Now, what will you do to try to bring an oasis to these food deserts that we definitely have in our predominantly minority areas? And then on top of that, what type of transit system do you envision for our city and our parish so that they can actually get to these grocery stores or to these healthy food markets?
Yeah. Well, look, I think the mayor's office and the Healthy BR initiative is doing a great job supplementing some of the options that we don't have, and specifically North Baton Rouge. But at the end of the day, we need grocery stores. We need fresh fruit and produce, and we need to go out and recruit them. We need to create models that can be attractive to vendors and stores to come here. I do think we need to not just attract one store, but we need to attract a distribution center that can put maybe 2 stores in Baton Rouge and some in some neighboring cities, but have that distribution center that will, one, create more jobs, but also it would be easily logistically to get the products and services to the stores because you got a distribution center in the region. So at the end of the day, that's what it is. I mean, when I grew up here in Skylandville and North Baton Rouge, there were grocery stores everywhere. Wow. But now, you know, they're leaving, closing their doors. But we hadn't had a huge exodus of people. There's still a lot of people here. What's going on and what has happened is they're putting all the assets on one side of town. Healthcare, grocery stores, even schools. And we got to change that. And what you're doing, you're making people north drive south with your products and services. And we need to change that. We need to make sure that some of these products and services stay in North Baton Rouge, in Mid-City.
And how do we bring this new age transit system to Baton Rouge?
I'm glad you asked me that. I serving on the airport commission, has given me a insight into transportation in a way that I otherwise hadn't had. I've been on the airport commission for the past 7 years, past 2 years, the chairperson on the airport commission. When I visit other cities, I can get off an airplane, get connected to a Uber or a taxi, get connected to a tram or a bus, and access the entire city. I don't have to have a car, don't have to rent a car, and get all over the entire city. You see that all over, and that's what we need here. You should be able to get off the plane at BTR, get on the train, a tram, or a bus, and get anywhere in the entire city, and vice versa. And that's what we need. So we have some serious things that we need to address, like transportation, like healthcare, like our flood and drainage issues, but we got to stop kicking the can down the road. And somebody has to pay for it. Now, how we pay for it, that can be discussed. And sometimes that may include taxes, but sometimes that may be cutting the fat. There's a $900 million budget. There's a lot of things that we can reappropriate funds to. Let me tell you another thing, Braylon. Some of these quasi-government agencies that have dedicated taxes, have these huge surpluses. Wow. We need to look at that. I'm not in support of changing or taking away anything that the taxpayer has already voted on. But when you're looking at renewals or new dedicated taxes, we need to look at some language in that when these quasi-government agencies have huge surpluses and we're looking for funds to address transportation, address health care, or just balance the city parish budget, that we can go in there and get those funds if these quasi-government agencies have huge surpluses.
Yes. Now, of course, we've been following your campaign, and you definitely call yourself a unity candidate, citing your experience of being able to reach across the aisle, racist, party, gender lines. But as we know, St. George seems to be on the cusp of reality. I know that's kind of tied up in the courts right now. But if you take office as a councilman with this new council, will you join the effort to try to still prevent St. George from happening, or what does that look like? What the councilman done? Does he reach out to the St. George delegation and say, "Hey, let's kind of rethink this," or what?
I'm not in support of St. George. I hope it doesn't happen. I think it is legalized segregation. I think a lot of people who have represented Mid-City and North Baton Rouge bought into this concept of doing what's great for the whole parish, or doing what's great for the city, or doing what's great for downtown. And many of our resources went out to the borders of the city, went out to the suburbs. And if you look at the St. George area, many of our investments went out there, and they want to take their ball and go home. So I don't think that should happen. So I hope I will do whatever I can. I've advocated against it. I've talked to people about why I don't think it should happen. I will continue to do that. If it happens, which I hope it doesn't happen, we need to make sure that legacy costs is something that they are held accountable for. We've seen in the school system where, many of these cities and the state have come in and take, the assets and didn't take with them the liability of the legacy costs. We need to make sure that doesn't happen. So, no, I'm against it, and I'll do whatever I can as a citizen and as an elected official to fight it.
Now, just to get a little bit away from politics for a second, as we know, the Coach Prime, this wave is going on ever since he's touched down in Jackson State, and we know that the SWAC will begin football games in the spring. Now, I'm pretty sure you're a supporter of the Southern Jags.
Most definitely.
Away. Now, do you think, based off the memes, they're saying, we don't care if it's Coach Prime time or whatever, Jags by 21, Jags by 23. I mean, what does that score look like, to the councilman? I don't. Jaguars meet Jackson State.
I don't know what the score looks like. I tell people all the time, growing up here in Banks, there were two constant sounds that I could hear playing in my yard and in my neighborhood. That's those planes taking off and landing at the airport, and the human jukebox playing, practicing outside the stadium. So, I love Southern, went to Southern, so I'm blue and gold, Jaguar Nation all the way. I like primetime, though. I do like Dion. I've been a fan of his for a long time. I think he's going to bring an entertainment value to the SWAC, to J-State. I think he's going to do them well. I think it's going to make the rivalry and the competition that much more greater. And I'm all about the cream rising to the top. So what I think what's going to happen is the Jaguar Nation is going to rise to the occasion and compete as we always do. Coach O has been doing a good job. I like the work he's been doing. I think he'll rise to the occasion. Primetime going to bring a little bit more cameras, bring more resources, bring more sponsorships because he's here. I think it's a win for the SWAC as a whole. So I think we all will win.
So and I guess just kind of wrap things up come November 3rd, when the citizens are going, because clearly they have a wide variety of candidates to choose from in your race. Why should they select Cleve Dunn Jr. to be their next councilman?
I tell people this all the time. You look at platforms, you look at push cards, and we all have, items on them, and we have talking points. But for me, at the end of the day, politics, campaigns are about people, about candidates, and what's inside of the candidate, what drives them, what motivates them. Can you count on them to go represent and bring resources back? You look at my track record, you look at my activity in the community, you look at my business acumen, creating jobs and income opportunities for not only me and the people that work on my staff, but other businesses, exposing them to opportunities and helping them to grow their business, but being an advocate for our community, being there some of our toughest times. You mentioned the flood, you mentioned, the Sterling and all of my involvement there. Many people run for office and you never heard of them, never seen them in the community, never done anything, but they want to run for office and represent you. Never been to the city council to speak on the issue or advocate for an issue. Well, you've seen me do all of that. You've seen my fight, you've seen my grit, you've seen me willing to confront, challenges and issues in our community, in our government, and you've seen us bring home resources. I'm Cleve Dunn Jr. Because of my track record, because who I've been and the role I played in this community, I think you should vote for me. I need your prayers, I need your support, and ultimately I need your vote. Cleve Dunn Jr., number 110 on your ballot.
Well, thank you, Cleve, for joining us, and we wish you well on November 3rd.
Thank you, Braylon. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, sir.